Hello guys and welcome back. In this video we're going to learn how to create fire, and in this example we're going to try and make this branch here burn. And the final sim that I showed in the render had a little bit of tweaks in the shader to make it look exactly like fire. In this example you can see there's a lot of density here, and all that was taken care of in the render, as well as adding more details to these areas, which looks super bright, but there is a lot of information in there. And obviously this is the final result. This is a very high res sim. It's 700 by 1200 by 700, total 743 million voxels in this, and it didn't take too long to sim. And I wanted to talk about why the pyro solver works really well in this example. And in general, even if we didn't use the pyro solver, we can just emit temperature and decay and have it decay naturally with the smoke solver, and just add some turbulence to it. All the default options in Houdini to add turbulence, and it works right away. And the reason for that is because every time you have a short-lived flames or smoke, you can get away with having just a lot of turbulence happening, and our eyes does not get a chance to analyze and see all of that in motion, and if there is any odd behavior. So we get satisfied by just looking at this and it looks realistic. But when you have a long-lasting sim, let's say a nuclear explosion with 1,000 frames, you can see everything evolving slowly. You have a huge sim, you have a volcano, for example, you have a huge expansion that creates a lot of spikes and tendrils. You have a lot of dynamics in the sim, and if you're going to be seeing that for a long period of time, you're going to start catching all the issues with a sim. And then that's where basically the pyro solver fails, and we have to create something else. And in this example, it works really well. So I'm going to show how this was done, and it's actually pretty straightforward. We're not going to be doing anything fancy. I have this branch here, and I'm going to use a point VOP to add a little bit of velocity to it, just to add some randomization to the emission. So I'm going to dive inside, create the noise based on the position, and let's connect that to V. Let's take a look. Cool, we have some values. Let's increase that a bit. Cool, just to have some randomization, randomized emission from the surface. Let's lower this to 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a fluid source as usual. And I'm going to set let's leave the division at that. I'm going to change it to, first thing, to source fuel to create the correct fields. And then we're going to tell it to build STF from this. And I'm going to lower the division to have more accurate representation of the volume of the geometry. Let's see. Okay, that's not too bad. And then under the STF from geometry, I'm going to lower this to have to not have a super blurry edges, to have it more precise. And let me verify what that value is. Cool. And I'm gonna lower the, something like that. I'm gonna lower the division. And then for the velocity, we're good there. I'm gonna leave it as the default, and that's it. I'm gonna create a null. Call this out fuel, and we're going to create the dock network. Let me copy something so we don't have to waste time. I'm gonna paste the smoke object that has the correct bounds, if I can do that. Cool, so that's our smoke object. I'm gonna create a pyro solver. I'm gonna create a source volume, And in this case, the sourcing is going to be continuous. So we're not gonna animate it or anything. We're gonna just have it emit forever. And then let's connect that to out fuel. Make sure it's set to out fuel. Okay. And it's a good idea to have, when you have fire or you have a lot of flames in general, it's good to have gravity in general, because what needs to happen is the hot areas will go up, and then as it decays off, it starts falling down, which is more realistic. So the gravity helps with that. But sometimes it can be really aggressive to the volume, so we may have to adjust that if we need to. And let's increase the resolution here, and let's hit play. And we have our fire going, and this is just we just started with this, and you can see it here better. You can see there is density in this area, and that's basically the smoke that is emitted after the flame dies. So let me create a doc import fields. We can visualize those that information a bit better. Pyro, and then let's import not fire. Where is it? Smoke. Oh, we need something else. Yeah, pyre. Sorry. Cool. So this is the visualizer, the default. Let's change this. I'm actually gonna copy and paste an existing node to save time. Cool. And let's increase the density. You can see there's a lot of information in there, not just the temperature. There's a lot of information in the density field. And let's I'm not gonna change the grid to have a resize dynamic. I'm gonna leave it as static for now. Actually, we can add a gas resize, but I don't want it to expand more than this, so I'm gonna leave it at clamp maximum to initial static. And let's add a little bit of padding and lower this so it doesn't kill the volume too much. Okay, let's go to let's increase the velocity and see how that affects the sim. Okay, you can see it. It's emitting in these two directions. Now, what I think is happening is I think the noise is a 1D because of that streak. So I'm going to change it to 3D so it's not it generates the correct vectors. Let's take a look. Cool. So now we have more randomized emission, and we should be seeing some fire. So let's set this to 1. Let's lower the threshold so we capture more temperature. Cool, and I think we have a good start already. So let's go back to the Pyro solver and start tweaking some values. The ignition temperature, I'm gonna increase this to 0.25, and the reason for that is I want, for example, if we have a gap in the sim that doesn't emit fuel, I want some smoke to emit, some fuel to emit and get dragged, and then as it meets with another area, it can ignite that. So not everything is happening around the edges. And actually, I remember I wanted to add a little bit more variation. I think it's on by default. So we have, I wanted some variation in the sourcing, and I'm gonna increase that a bit to make actual gaps in the sim. And you can see how it's moving. And what that will cause is some parts will emit fuel and then stop, and then another area will emit fuel, and they will combine and both get ignited together, which can be really cool. Okay, so I'm gonna increase that. The burn rate, let's lower this. I don't want everything to burn. And the fuel efficiency, I want to increase that. We'll try it. Let's set it to 1 and see what happens. So too much flames. Let's set this to 0.2 instead. And then the temperature output, I'm gonna lower this because I want all the hot areas to be surrounding this. I don't want it to travel too far or generate any temperature that goes beyond this. So I don't want too much heat generated from this, because when you have a fire like this, it's generally localized in the effect. Actually, we can lower this, and then I want some more gas to be more smoke to be released. Okay, cool. I think it's working, and let's increase the buoyancy a bit so it goes up a bit more. And then for the temperature diffusion, what's happening is there is a gas diffuse node that is applying a blur to the temperature. I don't want that. I want it to stay sharper with a little bit of blurring. So I'm going to set this to 0.1. And then the cooling rate, obviously, in this example where we wanted to have short flames, we need the cooling rate to be a bit higher, in general, which is high currently. So I'm going to increase this just a tiny bit, and then let's hit play. Cool. I think it's working. You can see the smoke here, which is there is a lot of information that we can utilize. We're getting a lot of breakup as well. And let's go to shape and start adding all these guys. So I'm not gonna tweak them too much. I'm gonna just set the default, and I'm gonna increase the confinement a bit more. I'm gonna increase the turbulence. We'll leave that as the default. We'll increase the shredding because it will break. This will actually break the velocity into various sections, which can create a lot of interesting breakups. And then we'll increase the disturbance as well, and obviously the dissipation, so it doesn't live too long. Yeah, maybe the dissipation is too much, and I'm gonna go back and lower the velocity. We left it at really high number, so something like that. And I think that's all we have to do. You can see that that's the flame. That's the kind of effect that I was talking about, is you get a section that meets somewhere else and ignites, and that's really cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go up, and let's take a look at this. And I want to visualize all the information that we have here. I wanted to see how this is working. Yeah, and actually the ignition here, I think it's working really nicely because of the way the flames are meeting and igniting together. I think this is really cool, and this is a very tricky effect to create if you're creating your own custom solver. I think it's much better to use the combustion model for this, where it can emit fuel, and then based on what that fuel is doing, it can ignite or not. And let's see, and then I wanted to advect the fuel with the sim, which I think will help make the emission feel a bit more realistic. Well, it's probably too much advection. I still don't understand why the fuel advection causes this. I think my understanding is that it emits and then it gets advected by the velocity. So we have fuel that didn't burn yet, that moved upward, that is somewhere else, and that gets ignited, and the effect keeps happening, so it accumulates, and we have to be careful with this. But I think it's very important to add a little bit, just a tiny bit of advection to the fuel field. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to lower it, and I'm going to sim a couple of frames. Let me paste it here so we have the same resolution in the source. I'm going to sim a couple of frames, and then we'll continue in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in a bit.